You can sleep on the floor, and soon enough, this house will finally be ours. Jessica's voice, my daughter-in-law, sliced through the phone like a knife. Cold, calculated, dripping with contempt. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. I stood there in silence, clutching the phone, my heart pounding like a war drum inside my chest. 71 years of life, decades of sacrifice, and for the first time, someone dared to order me inside my own home to sleep on the floor like a beggar. Worse, she spoke as though my house, the house I had paid off brick by brick, was already hers. My name is Helen. For 3 long years, I opened my doors to my son Michael and his wife Jessica, just until we save for our own place, Mom. Michael had promised, flashing the smile that once melted my heart when he was a boy. I believed him. Like a fool, I believed him. So I gave them the master bedroom, moving my sewing machine into a tiny side room that became my temporary space. I cooked their meals, paid their bills, kept the lights on, and the fridge full. Jessica slept till noon, yet her designer robes were always pressed and ready because I washed them. She threw dinner parties for her friends, laughing in my dining room as if she owned it because I prepared the food. And Michael, he let it all happen, blind with love, or perhaps too weak to see the truth. Every corner of this house holds a memory of my sacrifices. The polished banister, where I once watched Michael run down on Christmas mornings. The photo frame on the mantel, still holding the picture of him in his graduation gown, my proudest day after years of working double shifts. The deed of this house, kept carefully in my drawer, signed in my name alone. That deed was supposed to be my shield, proof of a lifetime of labor. But lately, I saw how Jessica looked at it whenever she thought I wasn't watching, hungry, calculating, as if it were already hers. That night, as I dragged a mattress across the cold tile floor, my knees cracking with every step, I felt something inside me shift. The house still smelled of pot roast I had cooked for a dinner no one attended. The candles I had lit burned down to wax stubs, forgotten like me. And as I spread the blanket on the floor of my own living room, one thought echoed louder than any insult Jessica had ever thrown. I was no longer a mother, or even a woman in her own home. I was simply the obstacle standing between them and the deed. The floor was cold, but not as cold as the realization that my son and his wife saw me as nothing more than an inconvenient barrier. Every creak of the tile beneath my back whispered their intentions. Once she signs, the house is ours. Morning came. My body ached, yet I folded the sheets neatly, tucked the mattress back into the closet, and prepared breakfast as though nothing had happened. Scrambled eggs for Michael, toast with jam for Jessica. The aroma of freshly ground coffee filled the air, masking the bitterness boiling inside me. Michael stumbled into the kitchen, yawning. "Morning, Mom," he mumbled, sitting down, never glancing at me, never asking where I had slept, as if it were normal for a 71-year-old woman to sleep on the floor at her daughter-in-law's command. Jessica appeared moments later, wearing the silk robe I had washed the night before. She didn't say good morning. Instead, she sat, poured herself coffee, and checked her phone. "Michael, honey, my friends are coming for lunch today. I want something special. Your mom can make that roast chicken they liked last time." "Of course," Michael said immediately, turning to me. "Right, Mom?" The silence stretched. For the first time in 3 years, I didn't answer right away. My hands were wet from the sink, gripping a dish so tightly I thought it might crack. Finally, I murmured, "Of course." The words tasted like ash. By noon, Jessica's friends had arrived, 3 women in designer coats that cost more than my monthly pension. They strutted in as if the house were their playground. "It smells amazing," one said, tossing her coat on a chair without asking, Jessica, you're lucky to have such a useful mother-in-law. Yes, Jessica replied with a smile that never reached her eyes. She's very handy. Like, live in help, really. They laughed as if I weren't standing there, setting down the dishes I had spent hours preparing. Between bites of roasted chicken, another friend asked, "So, when will you two move into your own place?" Jessica sighed dramatically, resting her chin on her manicured hand. Why would we? We don't pay rent, we don't pay bills, we don't cook, we don't clean. It's like living in a hotel. And Michael's mother? Well, she lowered her voice, but not enough. She's just an old woman who doesn't know when to step aside. The laughter that followed was sharper than any blade. I retreated to the kitchen, where the sound of their joy became the background music to my humiliation. Each plate I washed, each glass I polished, was a reminder. I was invisible, disposable, a trespasser in the home I had built. But somewhere deep inside, that humiliation began to harden not into despair, but into resolve. That night, after the laughter of Jessica's friends had finally faded, I stood in the hallway, staring at the flickering shadows on the wall. My body was tired, but my mind refused to rest. The words, "old woman who doesn't know when to step aside," replayed again and again, poisoning the silence of my home. I was carrying a basket of laundry toward the sewing room, my so-called bedroom, when I heard Jessica's voice from the living room. She was on the phone, her tone syrupy sweet at first, then sharp as glass. "Don't worry, Mom," she giggled. "Michael's too soft to push her, but I'll handle it. Once we get her to sign the papers, the deed is ours. She's old. She'll fold." The basket slipped from my arms, clothes spilling across the floor. I froze, every muscle locked, listening. Yes, the house is in her name, but not for long. I've already talked to a friend who knows how to make it look like a simple transfer. She won't even know what she's signing. And once it's done, we'll finally have the freedom we deserve. She'll have nothing. Her laughter sliced through me. Not only did she want me gone, she wanted to erase me. I backed away quietly, retreating into the darkness of the hallway. My knees shook, but not from age, from rage. My entire life had been poured into this house. I worked double shifts after my husband abandoned us. I skipped vacations, patched clothes, and saved every dime to make sure Michael had a home, an education, a future. And now his wife, this entitled stranger, planned to strip me of it all. Lying on my thin mattress that night, staring at the cracked ceiling, I felt the weight of 3 years of servitude pressing down. Every insult, every dismissal, every silent meal I ate alone while they enjoyed the luxuries I provided suddenly, it all crystallized into one simple truth. I was not loved here. I was not respected. I was merely tolerated until my usefulness ended, and my signature transferred everything I had built into their greedy hands. My chest tightened with a mixture of grief and fury. For the first time, I admitted the unthinkable. My son had chosen her side. He would not protect me. He would not defend me. But I still had one weapon left: knowledge. The deed was in my name. The house was mine. And as long as I drew breath, Jessica would never own it. That night, as the house grew quiet, I whispered a vow into the dark. "You think I'm weak, Jessica. But tomorrow, you'll learn just how dangerous an old woman can be." The next morning, I moved about the kitchen as if nothing had happened. Jessica lounged in her silk robe, scrolling on her phone, while Michael read the paper, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath my calm face. I served breakfast silently, my hands steady, my voice quiet. But inside, every word Jessica had said the night before burned like fire in my chest. As soon as they left the house, I slipped on my coat and walked 2 blocks to Barbara's home. Barbara had been my neighbor for 30 years, a widow with a sharp tongue and an even sharper memory. She opened the door, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside without a word. Over coffee, I told her everything: the humiliations, the insults, the voice message ordering me to sleep on the floor, and finally, Jessica's late-night phone call about stealing my house. Barbara listened, her expression darkening with each detail. "Helen," she said finally, her voice steady, "you cannot let this continue. They're using you. Worse, they're planning to destroy you. You need help, and not just from me." That's when she mentioned Stephen, a lawyer she'd known for years. He helped me sort out my late husband's estate. Honest man, tough in court. You should call him. The very idea made me tremble. Lawyers meant conflict, and conflict meant losing Michael forever. But then I thought of Jessica's laughter, her words, "She'll have nothing." That afternoon I dialed Stephen's number. His voice was calm, professional. "Mrs. Miller," he said after I explained my situation, "do not sign anything. If they present you with papers, no matter what they claim, refuse until I've seen them. And keep every message, every recording. That evidence may save you." When I hung up, a strange new feeling pulsed in my veins. Strength. For the first time in years, I wasn't just enduring, I was preparing. That evening, Jessica pranced into the kitchen, with Michael trailing behind. She carried a folder, her smile sugary sweet. "Helen, we need you to sign some documents," she cooed. "It's just a routine insurance update." My heart hammered, but I remembered Stephen's words. I forced a smile. "Of course, dear, but I'd like my lawyer to look at it first." Jessica's face froze, the smile cracking. Michael shifted uncomfortably. "Lawyer?" he repeated, confused. "Yes," I said calmly, folding the laundry as if this were nothing. "From now on, everything goes through him." It was a small moment, but as Jessica's eyes flashed with panic, I felt the shift. For the first time in 3 years, the balance of power tilted ever so slightly back to me. The folder Jessica had carried that evening never left my mind. She had looked too eager, too desperate. That alone told me it wasn't insurance paperwork. It was something more dangerous. The next morning, Michael knocked gently on my sewing room door. He carried the same folder, his expression strained. "Mom," he began softly, "Jessica didn't mean to overwhelm you yesterday. These papers, they're just a precaution, something to make things easier in the future." I raised an eyebrow. "Easier for whom, Michael?" He hesitated. "For all of us. You're 71. If something happened, it would be complicated legally. This way, the house automatically stays in the family." The words stabbed deep. The house automatically stays in the family. Which family? The one I'd built with blood and sacrifice? Or the one Jessica wanted to control? I opened the folder. Legal documents stared back at me, dense with paragraphs and small print. But my eyes locked on one line: transfer of ownership. My hands shook. They weren't hiding it anymore. They wanted me to sign away everything. I remembered Stephen's warning: "Don't sign a single page." So I smiled. "I'll read it carefully and get back to you." Jessica stormed into the room minutes later. "What's there to read? Just sign it, Helen. We're family." Her mask slipped. Her tone wasn't sweet anymore. It was sharp, commanding. "Unless..." She leaned closer, her voice a whisper dripping with venom. "Unless you think this house should rot with you." I met her gaze calmly. "Jessica, I've already sent the papers to my lawyer. The silence that followed was thick as smoke. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. Your lawyer? Yes, I said firmly. Everything concerning this house will be reviewed. I won't be tricked. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in her eyes. She spun on her heel and left, muttering under her breath. Later that night, Stephen called me after reviewing scanned copies of the documents I had sent. His voice was grave. Helen, these are not harmless. They are legal transfers. If you had signed, you would have surrendered the deed. You would no longer own your home. A chill ran through me. But underneath it burned relief I hadn't fallen into their trap. Keep playing along, Stephen advised. Gather more proof. Let them reveal themselves fully. The more they push, the stronger our case. As I hung up, I looked around my sewing room, the smallest space in the house I had built. For years it felt like a prison. But tonight, it felt like a command center. Jessica thought I was weak, one step away from surrender. What she didn't know was that I was already preparing my first counterstrike. From that day forward, I stopped being their silent servant. On the surface, nothing changed. I still cooked, cleaned, and kept the house running. But behind the curtains, I was no longer a victim. I was a strategist. The first step was securing every important document. The deed, the insurance policies, the savings account statements. I packed them neatly into a folder and walked them over to Stephen's office. Keep these safe, I told him. If anything happens, they must never touch a single page. He locked them in a fireproof safe, giving me a copy of the receipt. Just holding it made me feel lighter, freer. Back at home, Jessica grew more restless. She rummaged through drawers when she thought I wasn't watching, always searching for the deed. Sometimes, she whispered with Michael in the kitchen late at night. Their voices rose and fell, but I caught enough to know they were panicking. She'll sign eventually, Jessica hissed one evening. She won't, Michael muttered. She's changed. They were right, I had changed. I began setting boundaries. When Jessica tossed her dirty dishes in the sink, I left them there. When she barked orders for me to iron her dresses, I simply said, "No, Jessica. You're capable of doing that yourself." The shock on her face was almost satisfying. Michael noticed too. "Mom," he said one morning, "Jessica feels like you don't respect her." Huh, I laughed bitterly. Respect? I gave her my master bedroom, my kitchen, my roof. I paid every bill, every grocery. Respect is not the issue, Michael. Gratitude Island. His eyes darted away. He had no answer. Meanwhile, Stephen advised me to start documenting everything. Every insult, every order, every attempt they made to push papers under my nose. I wrote it all down in a notebook, complete with dates and times. I even recorded Jessica one afternoon when she sneered, "Sign the deed, Helen, or you'll regret it." Piece by piece, I was building a wall of evidence. But it wasn't just about defense. I began reclaiming small joys, tending my garden without rushing to prepare their lunch, sitting on the porch with Barbara for tea, even taking long walks after dinner. Every act of self-care was a declaration I was no longer their unpaid maid. Jessica noticed. Her voice grew sharper, her tone more desperate. She wanted control, but the tighter she tried to grip, the more it slipped away. For 3 years, I had been silent. Now, with each passing day, I found my voice again. And once a silenced woman finds her voice, she becomes the one thing her betrayers fear most. Unstoppable. Jessica's frustration soon turned into something more dangerous. Lies. It began with whispers among neighbors. Barbara came over one afternoon, lips tight with anger. "Helen, I need you to know what Jessica's been saying. She told Mrs. Carter you're..." losing your memory, that you're not capable of handling the house anymore. I felt my stomach twist, but Barbara pressed on. She says you're confused, unstable, that soon she and Michael will need to take over for your own good. Ah, so this was her next move if she couldn't trick me into signing. She'd paint me as unfit. Crazy. Days later, it escalated. A knock at my door revealed two uniformed officers. "Mrs. Miller?" one asked gently. "We received a call expressing concern about your well-being. Reports of memory problems and potential neglect." My blood ran cold, but I steadied myself. "Officers, would you like some coffee while I show you around?" They followed me through the house. I showed them my organized bills, my perfectly kept pantry, my notebook, where I had recorded every insult and attempt to coerce me. I even let them check my pill box, every dose labeled and taken on time. When we returned to the living room, I placed steaming cups of coffee in front of them. "Does this look like the home of a confused old woman?" I asked quietly. The older officer shook his head, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "No, ma'am. You seem perfectly capable. Unfortunately, these reports happen more than you'd think, children trying to pressure their parents. We'll mark this complaint as false." Relief washed over me, but it was mixed with fury. Jessica had crossed a line. She wasn't just humiliating me behind closed doors. She was dragging my name into the street. That evening, when Michael came home, I confronted him. "Did you know your wife reported me as unfit?" His eyes widened, guilt flickering across his face. "Mom, she thought maybe you needed help." "Help?" My voice cracked like thunder. "Michael, I've helped you for 3 years. Paid your bills, cooked your meals, kept this roof over your head, and now you stand there while she calls me senile?" He looked down, ashamed but silent. Jessica, however, didn't bother with shame. She smirked, her eyes glinting. "No one will believe you, Helen. Everyone already thinks you're old and weak." But she was wrong. The officers believed me. Barbara believed me. And soon, I would make sure the whole world believed me too. 3 days after the police visit, the atmosphere in the house shifted. Jessica, who normally barked orders from her throne at the dining table, began speaking with a sweetness that made my skin crawl. "Mom," she said one evening, her voice dripping with false affection, "we've been thinking, maybe we haven't treated you as well as we should. You've done so much for us. Why don't we have a family dinner tomorrow? Just the 3 of us. A fresh start." Michael chimed in quickly. "Yes, Mom. We can talk, make things right." His eyes wouldn't meet mine. I almost laughed at the performance. They weren't apologizing. They were regrouping. Barbara had warned me. When bullies realize force doesn't work, they switch to charm. Don't fall for it. Still, I agreed. "All right. Tomorrow night." The next day, I cooked carefully, not for them, but for myself. Roasted chicken, fresh herbs from my garden, mashed potatoes whipped until creamy. Every slice of the knife, every stir of the spoon, steadied my resolve. I set the table with my best china, the same dishes Jessica once mocked as old-fashioned. When evening came, they entered the dining room, dressed as if for an interview, Michael in a crisp shirt, Jessica in pearls. She plastered on a smile. "Helen, this looks wonderful. You didn't have to go to all this trouble. I wanted everything to be perfect," I replied calmly, pouring water into crystal glasses. "After all, it might be our last dinner together in this house." Jessica's smile faltered, but she recovered quickly. "Don't be dramatic. We're family. We belong here together." I sat opposite them, folding my hands on the table. Belonging isn't the same as owning. And last I checked, The deed still bears only one name, mine. Michael shifted uncomfortably. Mom, we're not trying to take anything from you. Jessica was just worried about the future. The future, I repeated, my voice steady. Funny word. I've been living your future for 3 years. Paying, cooking, cleaning. What exactly have you been preparing for, Michael? Because it certainly wasn't independence. Jessica leaned forward, her mask slipping for just a second. Helen, let's not make this ugly. We all want what's best. If you'd just sign the paperwork, everything would be simpler. I met her gaze with an icy calm. Jessica? Simplicity is overrated. Truth, however, that's priceless. Her lips tightened. She knew something had changed in me, something she could no longer control. Tomorrow the masks would come off completely, and when they did, I would be ready. The following evening began quietly, almost unnervingly so. Jessica had dressed herself in a sharp navy dress, her pearls gleaming like weapons. Michael wore the same anxious look he always carried when trapped between two storms. We sat at the dining table again, the air thick with something unsaid. For a moment, only the clinking of silverware against porcelain broke the silence. Then, Jessica set down her fork, with a deliberate clack. Helen, she began smoothly, we need to be honest with each other. You're not getting any younger. The house is too much for you. It makes sense to transfer ownership now before something happens and the courts get involved. My hand didn't tremble as I reached for my glass. Jessica, something already happened. You tried to trick me with forged documents. You called the police to paint me as senile. And you laughed about how I'd end up with nothing. Her eyes widened. Michael shifted uncomfortably. Mom, he started. No, Michael. My voice cut through the room like glass shattering. This is between your wife and me. Jessica leaned forward, her mask slipping. So what if I pushed a little? This house should be ours. You've had your time, Helen. You raised your son. You lived your life. Now it's our turn. I almost pitied her, so certain of her entitlement. Almost. From beneath the table, I pulled out a small recorder and pressed play. Jessica's voice filled the room. Captured from that night, she whispered on the phone. Once we get her to sign the papers, the deed is ours. She'll have nothing. Michael's head snapped toward her. Jessica, you said that? Her face drained of color. She's twisting it, Michael. That's taken out of context. Context? I asked, my tone razor sharp. Tell me, what context makes it acceptable to plot against the woman who gave you a roof, meals, and every comfort you enjoy? Michael looked between us, his eyes filled with a dawning horror. For the first time, he saw his wife not as the victim she pretended to be, but as the predator she was. Jessica slammed her hands on the table. This is ridiculous. You think anyone will believe you? You're an old woman with nothing but accusations. Calmly, I reached for another folder sitting beside me. I slid it across the table. Inside were Stephen's legal statements, notarized and stamped, copies of the fraudulent papers she'd tried to push in front of me. Dates, signatures, everything documented. Michael picked up the papers with trembling hands. His face went pale. Jessica, this is your handwriting. Silence fell heavy and absolute. Jessica's lips parted, but no sound came out. I stood, gathering my composure like a cloak around me. For 3 years I played the fool. Tonight the fool is finished. The house is mine, Jessica, and as of tomorrow, so is my freedom from both of you. Her mask shattered, tears streaking down her face. But I no longer cared. The truth was out. The tables had turned. The confrontation ended with Jessica sobbing into her hands, and Michael staring blankly at the damning evidence. For years, I had been invisible in my own house. Tonight, I was undeniable. I gathered the papers, the recorder, and rose from the table with a steadiness I hadn't felt in decades. Enough, I said quietly. You've both taken advantage of me long enough. Tomorrow, Stephen will file the necessary documents. You'll pack your things and leave this house. Jessica's head snapped up, her eyes blazing through her tears. You can't do this. We're family. I held her gaze unflinching. Family doesn't steal, Jessica. Family doesn't plot to throw you on the street. Blood doesn't excuse betrayal. Michael swallowed hard, his voice small. Mom, please, don't make us leave. We have nowhere to go. You had 3 years to save, Michael. 3 years of free rent, free meals, and bills I paid without a word. What did you do with that time? With that money? He looked down at his hands, ashamed. But I had no more pity left to give. Later that night, when the house finally grew silent, I walked to my bedroom, the master suite I had surrendered to them long ago. The door creaked open, revealing a space littered with their perfume bottles, ties, and careless clutter. But on the dresser, half buried beneath Jessica's makeup bag, lay something that made me pause: the house keys. The very same set I had handed Michael with trembling joy when he and Jessica moved in, believing we would be one big happy family. At the time, those keys symbolized trust, unity, and hope. Now, they were nothing but a reminder of my own naivete. I picked them up, their cold metal pressing into my palm. For a long moment, I simply stared at them, feeling the weight of 3 years of humiliation pressing down. Then, slowly, deliberately, I closed my fist around them. The keys hadn't changed, but I had. I stepped out into the hallway, turned toward the front door, and locked it with a final, resolute click. Behind me, the house was silent, too silent, but instead of fear, the quiet felt like liberation. I whispered to the empty rooms, "This is my house, and no one will ever take it from me again." That night I slept in the master bedroom, beneath sheets that still smelled faintly of her perfume. But it didn't matter. By morning, they would be gone, and the house, my house, would breathe freely again. As dawn crept across the curtains, I placed the keys on my nightstand. The symbol returned. Once, they had represented surrender. Now, they marked victory. The keys were the same, but I wasn't. This time, I was the one closing the door. If you've ever faced betrayal like this, share your story in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, because no one should ever forget that even the quietest voice can rise, and even the weakest hand can lock a door for good.